Well, welcome to One Simple Recipe, where we're hoping to take you one step closer to better health. My name is Judy Matuski, and I'm a registered dietitian as well as a culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition. And we are back every Thursday at 11:30, well, at least most Thursdays. We're back again with a really great recipe. We're kind of devoting the month of March and maybe a little bit into April to fish and seafood, and we're going to bring it to you some fresh, some frozen, and today it's going to be using tinned fish. So this is a little bit of a pantry staple, sort of, pasta, weeknight friendly. It is the fastest and easiest pasta you think you're ever going to make. Now, we are going to use a couple different ingredients. This is sort of a Sicilian-inspired recipe. It's actually from a cookbook that it's an oldie but a goodie. This is one that I picked up back in the 80s. It's The New Basics by Julee, Rosso and Sheila Lukins, and they also were the authors of the Silver Palate Cookbook. So for those of you that are, maybe closer to my age, you might remember that. But this is a great book, and it has some really interesting recipes in it. This one in particular is my husband's all-time favorite. He asks for it on every special occasion. He was so happy that I was making it tonight because he's like, oh, I'm going to look forward to that when I get home. So it's just interesting in that it's using sardines, fennel, and toasted, well, it calls for pine nuts. I never have pine nuts. I always just use walnuts, so toasted walnuts, and raisins, golden raisins. So unusual kind of flavor combination if you're not used to that. But again, very Sicilian in this flavor profile. So I did a couple of things as usual because some of these things, it's super easy, but the first step was to chop the fennel, or to julienne the fennel and the onion. And I realized that again, it was a 20-minute, you want to, on low heat, just kind of soften and slowly saute the onion and the fennel together in about 1/4 cup of olive oil, just so we can get it soft. I've done that, but I wanted to show you, and I realized when I realized that I didn't get a second fennel, so I had to cut this fennel up. So I don't have a second fennel to show you, fresh fennel, or the fennel bulb. But for those of you who are familiar, you're good to go. For those of you who are not as familiar with fennel, I can show you a couple things. Well, these were the stems that were kind of coming off the top of the bulb that I just cut off. These are a little bit fibrous. They don't break down real well. At least I never seem to get them to break down. They're pretty tough. I usually just, if I'm really being virtuous, I will freeze these and then use them in a stock. They're great to lay down on a baking sheet and then put fish on top of it to roast in the oven, because they'll infuse some of this fennel flavor. I am using the fronds though today, so we're going to use these little fronds, and we use the bulb of the fennel. So if you've not worked with fennel before, basically you're just kind of cutting off the tops of the stems, and then you're left with the bulb, if you're pretending this is the bulb. And then I cut the fennel bulb in half. And when you cut it in half, you can kind of see there's sort of a triangular looking stem. That's pretty tough. So you sort of just take your knife in and kind of follow the line of the stem and cut that out on both halves. And then the fennel was, again, in half. And then I just julienned it. I just took my knife and I just sliced through that half. I put the cut side down, sliced through to create little strips, little julienne strips. This is just the half of the fennel bulb. So that's what I did ahead of time. To the whole bulb, we used the whole bulb. And then I used an onion, the same size onion, so a pretty large onion. Same thing, I took the outer paper off and then cut it in half. And then I sliced down just like I did the fennel bulb. Now my onion was even bigger than this one. So I cut the onion in half, then I laid it flat, then I just kind of cut through it again, and then I did the julienne strips, so they were a little bit shorter, but depends on the size of your onion. But basically, you're trying to get your onion and your fennel about the same size julienne strips. So that's it. So instead of chopping, that's a little bit different. So we're making julienne strips with both the onion and the fennel. So that goes in with the 1/4 cup of olive oil, and then on low heat, you're really just trying to get this softened. So I've had this going. It takes about 20 minutes, and that's about how long I've had this here on the stove. So I didn't have to do that ahead of time just so I can show you it. But again, this is so quick and easy. That took me, it was just 20 minutes of downtime. So there's the onion and the fennel. It's hard to tell the difference between which one's the onion, which one's the fennel. All right, so I still have that on low heat. And then the other thing that I did, so while you're sauteing your onion and your fennel, then you can just get a pot of boiling water going, salted water, for your pasta. So I typically I love the Lalo brand. So we get this, I sort of pour it. I know you're going to, it's backwards, so it's going to be hard for you to see this. But the Lalo brand, you can find this in pretty much any supermarket. I love their whole wheat pasta. It's not like, it doesn't have this really super heavy whole wheat flavor. That's almost what I use 100% of the time. However, I had just used this the other day and I only used 12 ounces, so I didn't have enough of this one. So I just picked up the Secco brand, another absolutely fabulous pasta. You usually can't find this in whole grain, which is fine. You can just use regular semolina flour. So I used this. Now I cooked the whole pound, but you really only want to use 12 ounces for this dish. I tried to use a whole pound in it. I mean, you can, but it's a little bit too much pasta then for the amount of other ingredients. So 12 ounces seems to be the sweet spot. You're beginning to see more 12-ounce packages of pasta in the supermarket, which I actually love because a lot of times recipes call for 12 ounces rather than the full 16 ounces. So anyway, so you could use any pasta you want. I think it works better with spaghetti, or this is a bucatini, which is like spaghetti, but it has a hole in the middle. I like the longer spaghetti with this, but you could use any pasta shape. You really could, but traditionally it would be more with the spaghetti. All right, so this is really well softened because, like I said, I've had this kind of sitting here on low heat for about 20 minutes. And there was no other seasoning, so it's just the fennel and the onion. And here's where it just comes together so quickly, all right? So we're going to take sardines at the end, and we're going to add them, but I want to talk about them real quickly. I have a whole bunch here. These are sardines in a tikka masala sauce. This is just some sardines from a company called Fishwife. These were some sardines that I had used the other day. This is Santa Catarina. They're from Portugal. I found these just in a market. These are ones I did not bring back from Portugal when we were there over the summer. This is what I'm going to use today. These I found wild-caught sardines at Trader Joe's. And then these were really cool. These are little sardines that are in olive oil with a sort of a gourmet spice blend with some tomatoes and carrot and allspice. These I picked up, I have it, like I mentioned, the Euro Market. If you're in the area of Philly, it's out in Broomall. But there's a whole lot of different ones out there. So this is pretty much using just basic sardines. You don't need to have them seasoned or flavored. They're just sardines. So any ones you can find, great. Now the two that I have two different ones actually from Trader Joe's. You can see these are smaller. That's about the size that most tinned sardines are going to be. They're usually around this size, I would say. The other can that I picked up from Trader Joe's, they're so much bigger. There's just two, but these sardines are so much bigger. I'm sure they're going to be fine. Typically, I would use the smaller, because most of them tend to be a little bit smaller in the tin. So either one's fine, but I think I liked a little bit. Now this one from Trader Joe's is skinless and boneless. I don't particularly want that. I usually want the bones in the skin because there are a couple things with sardines. Yes, they do have a little bit of a stronger flavor, but they will mellow out, when you're cooking them like this. And also, we want the bones because that's almost 15 to 20% of your calcium for the day in the 3-ounce tin, and because the bones are there and that's a rich source of calcium. There's a lot of minerals in sardines, and that combined with their high omega-3 fatty acid content, which rivals salmon, the combination, it seems to, in some of the research, is showing that it really does have some cardiovascular protective benefits as well as reducing inflammation. So it's not just the omega-3 fatty acids by itself, but it seems to be, again, sort of the synergy between the omega-3 fatty acids and the minerals that are micronutrients that are very rich in sardines. And the other thing is they're not a high source of mercury or contaminants. That's what's fabulous about them. And they can live in your pantry, so they're there all the time, whether you're going to maybe make a toast out of them or make a little sardine, kind of sort of like a tuna salad out of them, or putting them in a pasta dish. So love, 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 love them. And I think it's just playing around with them and seeing how you like them best. All right, so that's here now. I have it on low heat. We're going to add just the toasted walnuts. I usually when I get walnuts, I usually get a pan out and go ahead and toast them ahead of time. And then I just put them in a big jar and then they're ready to go. Because I just think when it comes to nuts, if we can elevate the flavor a little bit more, especially when you're trying to cook lighter and healthier, the more intense flavors you can bring, the better. So regular walnuts are great, but toasted walnuts are so much better. Just a lot more flavor. So this is about a half of a cup of toasted walnuts. And then here goes the half a cup of golden raisins. So this seems like, raisins and sardines. And I know, I hear you, but it just works. These flavors work really, really well together. All right, so those two things are going to go in. And now I'm going to turn the heat up just a tiny bit. So we're kind of really still like low, not even medium low. It's on the lower end. So I'm just going to let this warm. So we're just going to let the raisins and the walnuts just kind of warm. Just sort of toss them around in the fennel and the onion and the olive oil that's in here. All right, warming them up, like that a couple of minutes or so. And then when we're adding the sardines, we're just going to add them off heat and break them up. And I'm not 100% sure about these bigger ones, but the smaller ones will definitely just break up and kind of just, they don't disappear because you can sort of see the flaked sardines a little bit, but they will flake and disperse throughout the pasta. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add the 2 cans of the tinned sardines. And then I'll just use my tongs here to, and I did drain off the oil. I think the oil, to me, the oil in the sardines tends to be a little bit fishy. Let me just turn this off even now. A little too fishy for me. So I don't usually use the oil. I usually do drain that off. And then I just use the olive oil instead of the oil from the tin. But it is better, I think, if you get them packed in olive oil. I think the flavor is just a little bit better. All right. So we're going to take this now. As you can see, I'm just breaking up and I'll pull it over, but I'm just breaking up the sardines. All right, and now I'm gonna do, the recipe calls for chopped parsley. You could use chopped parsley or you could use chopped basil would be great in this. But because I have the fennel, and you're gonna have the fennel, and you're gonna have the fennel fronds, right? The little leaves at the top of the fennel, let's just use that. I just chop them up and I'm gonna toss them in because I already have the fennel flavor in here. And this is, again, when you're building flavors, sometimes it's good to use ingredients in different ways. And that's just a way to use those fennel fronds, and rather than having to go out and get other herbs. And if you have them, great, which you should have a lot of fresh herbs in your pantry. Or in your refrigerator. All right, so we have this pretty well broken up. Now, this does not take cheese, so please do not add Parmesan cheese. I mean, obviously you can do anything you want, but this is not a pasta dish that you finish with cheese. I think if anything, I might just add a few bigger fennel fronds on top if you wanted to do a little garnish. Sometimes I serve this with a wedge of lemon because I just love lemon on anything that's fish. So I might do that as well. So then your pasta, you can do one of 2 ways. You can take your pasta and you could just put the pasta in a dish. Let me just put it for you. And then top it with the sauce. Or you could just, if you're kind of finishing up your pasta at the same time you're finishing up the sardine mixture here, you can just toss it in. So it actually, I think it's nice when you kind of have the time because I did cook this a little bit ahead of time. So let me just toss some of this in. I'm going to just, to make it easier, let me just put some in the bowl. So we'll put some pasta in the bowl. But typically what I'll do is I'll just kind of pull it right from the water when it's done boiling because I usually have my sauce done. And then I'll just take the pasta right from the water and put it right in. I did reserve a little bit of the pasta water, so the starchy water, because I might add that as I reheat this tonight for dinner, just to, because it might get just a little bit too, it'll lose a lot of any of its liquid that's in here, which is not. This isn't a saucy sauce. It's not meant to be. It's a pretty, chunky sauce, and that's the whole idea. But if you wanted to, you could thin it with a little bit of pasta water, and I think that's what I'm going to do when I do it tonight, when I reheat it for tonight. All right, so here it is, and then again, I would just probably take a couple of your fennel fronds and just pop them on the top. And then I usually, like I said, I usually will serve it with just a little, just a little wedge of lemon. And here it is. So here's your pasta with fresh fennel and sardines. It's, please try it. I really try it and let me know what you think. Even if, like I said, you're a little sardine suspicious, give it a shot. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised because it's not, in my opinion, overly fishy. So here we go. And this once you make this, and if you don't eat it all one night, it's great the next day. We've reheated it and it's perfectly fine. Just pop it in the microwave. All right, I think that's it for today. Again, reaching out to Athens Nutrition if you ever need any nutrition questions or concerns. We're happy to meet with you. And again, we're going to stay on this fish theme. So we'll be back next week with another fish dish. And it's, again, fish is probably the healthiest fast food, right? So we can skip those fast food lines and just cook fish in 5 minutes. All right, stay well till next week. Bye-bye.